In part C, we'll examine how the late 70s proved to be a moment of great change in the Middle East. In fact, the late 70s proved to be a big change for the entire world. So why not the Middle East? If we go back to the map of geopolitical relations of the Middle East during the Cold War, you can see that three states have two colors. It's because they changed their geopolitical stance, and as you can see, they all changed at the very end of the 70s. It's Egypt, Iraq, and Iran. So let's have a look at these three countries. First of all, Egypt. In 1978, the USA managed to obtain an incredible victory in their shuttle diplomacy. Indeed, the USA managed to organize successful negotiations between Egypt and Israel. So on this picture, which was taken in Camp David, that's the reason why the agreement is known as the Camp David Accords. And Camp David is a kind of summer residency of the US president. So you can see Jimmy Carter, the US president, in the middle, and Sadat, the Egyptian leader, is to the left, and to the right is begging the Israel prime minister. This was a historical moment because Egypt recognized the existence of Israel, and in return Egypt received Sinai back. So the Arab League was weakened by this because it expelled Egypt, first of all, and the blow for the Palestinian cause was huge. Since the beginning, Egypt had been the main enemy of Israel and the strongest state. So with Egypt now out of the game, it was clear that the Palestinians were more alone than ever. And actually, negotiations with Israel also existed for Gaza and the West Bank, and they totally failed for this reason. So that's a turning point in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. On the other side of the region, in the east, 1979 was the year of the extremely important Islamic Revolution in Iran. Iran used to be an ally of the USA because the head of state in Iran, the Shah, was totally loyal to the United States. He gave access to the oil reserves of his country to US companies, for example. And in 1979, he was overthrown by a grassroots revolution. It means a revolution that really happened with the active role of the people, notably in the capital city, Tehran. This revolution could have led to a communist uprising, a communist takeover, because the Iranian communists were very, very active at that moment. But another actor was also instrumental, and it was an Islamist leader, a religious and political leader, in fact, known as Ayatollah Khomeini. He was in exile in France. He was supported by many governments, in fact, because he was believed to be against the Shah, mostly, and he said he would free the people of Iran. What he did not say clearly enough was his intentions in terms of social and religious issues, because his vision of Islam was extremely traditional, very, very conservative, and this has led to the Iran we have today. When Khomeini arrived in Tehran in the middle of a revolution in February 1979, he was greeted by millions. A few months later, he was, many people that had applauded his arrival were disappointed because of his great social conservatism. But anyway, if the Islamic Revolution in Iran is so important for the Middle East, it is because it marked a turning point. Before that date, if you were an angry young man, an angry young Arab in the Middle East, and you were against the US influence, you would turn to socialist ideas. And politically, the governments that were very anti-US were on the Soviet side. Now, because there was an enemy of the USA that was not a communist country, but an Islamic country, from this moment, angry young people in the Middle East, angry young Arabs, would more easily turn to Islamism, which means political Islam in a way, and not on Marxist movements anymore. Okay, so if you think of all the problems linked to Islamism in the world today, you can feel the importance of this event. One remark about the impact of this revolution, something that is a big picture alert, that is connected to the lesson about the USA and the world. Very complex days took place in the year 1979 in Iran. In November, there were some students who were really faithful to Khomeini, who decided, probably Khomeini decided that, to take over the US embassy in Tehran. And they kept American hostages in there for 444 days. So it was a humiliation for the USA. And it was only after a long negotiation that the crisis came to an end, after the election of Ronald Reagan. Now, it almost looks like a Game of Thrones affair. What I mean is that because they had lost a friend, because they had lost an ally, Iran, the USA made a new friend. And this new friend was actually the new dictator of Iraq, Saddam Hussein. If you look at the map, you understand why there is a rivalry, there was and still is, a rivalry between Iraq and Iran, two neighbors, and in the middle of these two neighbors, very important oil reserves. Saddam Hussein was encouraged, supported, funded by the United States of America for 8 years because he tried to conquer actually some regions in the west of Iran that were full of oil. For 8 years the USA funded this war that led to nothing on the map but 1 million dead. And it was a total failure for Iraq in the end. So the conclusion of this US foreign policy in the Middle East during the Cold War, and the main impact is that it led to even greater divisions between the Arabs. Arab nationalism totally failed in the sense that it failed to reach any kind of unity. And that's really the result of the US foreign policy there. It's also the result of true disagreements, not to say true hatreds, between some Arab states. That's true. Just one last thing about 1979 in the Middle East. To the very far east of the region, in 1979, the USSR invaded Afghanistan. It's a complex story. We don't need many details. The USSR wanted to give support to a new communist regime there. Afghanistan is a landlocked country, full of mountains. It's just impossible to win a war there. History has taught this. In 1979, when the USSR attacked Afghanistan, the USA was really happy because the USA understood that this war could become the USSR's Vietnam War, in the sense that it could be a long, unwinnable war that would damage the Soviet economy and the Soviet power. And this is what happened. So, the USA actively helped and funded resistance fighters in Afghanistan. These fighters were known as Mujahideen, and among these Mujahideen, some were really conservative Islamists, and among them, one man was named Osama bin Laden.